All right, and we're recording. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Tellor Tech Call, September 15th, 2020. First, just going to give you guys some quick updates, and then we can jump into just some of the Tellor v2.5 issues and some other stuff related to mining and kind of what we plan to do. But we'd love to make it a discussion today. So anything we talk about, chime in either now on the call or afterwards. But yeah, so the quick announcements. So we're still on track, V2. We're actually pushing a change to Rinkeby tomorrow. Basically, we did some gas golfing on the contracts. You guys, that was JG, did an excellent job. So nothing else is changing. So none of the structure or anything. We just made a few things cheaper. So you shouldn't have to worry about the miner or anything else with the contracts as far as the structure goes. So yeah, take a look at that. We're still planning on the V2 launch. Official launch will be September 23rd. I guess sometime in the morning Eastern time. Like say, my goal is 11 a.m. or something around there. Get it up. But it's flexible. whenever we get to it. So yeah, the 23rd we'll be launching V2, and that should be really exciting. So we'll be here, and we obviously have the call next week, and we can go over anything. But if you have any questions or last minute changes or comments, let us know. As far as the miner goes, so the V2 miner is out. You can go download it now. If you're running it, it should automatically switch for you, so you won't have to touch anything. I know a lot of you guys just kind of use ours as a reference implementation and then edit and chop up your own code for doing that. So feel free, have at it. We'll probably be pushing for the mining software. We're going to be working on kind of expanding the test packages, and we're going to just making it simpler and better as we move forward. So always open to open source contributions on that. I know a lot of you guys have already done a lot of it individually. Definitely feel free to push. Yeah, so that's like the V2 updates. Other things, yeah, so I think Mike, I don't know if you want to talk, are we on Blockfolio yet?
Yeah, so we, for all you Blockfolio users out there, and please chime in the chat if you guys do use Blockfolio. We're curious to see how many of our community uses Blockfolio, but we now are on Blockfolio Signal, and what that'll allow us to do is push out content and updates to you guys directly through Blockfolio, and we're excited. We're excited to see if you guys like that, and if we get more engagement, and if it's just a better way to reach you guys instead of just tweeting announcements and updates and things like that. So we've heard you guys request it for a while now, and we finally got that. I guess you'd call it a listing. We got that arrangement pushed through finally. So stay tuned. I've just made our first little announcement, or I don't know what you call it. I wanted to call it a tweet, but a post through Blockfolio Signal earlier today. But stay tuned. I think maybe a V2 announcement through Blockfolio Signal would be a nice kickoff for it. So
cool.
Yep, that's that. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. The other thing, so I'll be giving a talk next week. I don't know if I know exactly when. I actually think I'm recording it ahead of time and they're posting it, but giving a talk there's a Maltese conference. So Maltese is a wallet on Ethereum, so I'll be sure to post that. Should be a good DeFi type event. So we'll definitely push out that as we get more information. And then I found out I'll also be speaking at the Liquidity 2020 event, which is mid-October. So once again, you can either just go Google Liquidity 2020 or we'll post something about it as time gets closer. But that's another good DeFi event that we'll be kind of attending. So yeah, I think that's about it for updates. We're kind of busy at work, obviously, with a lot of the V2 stuff. That's really where a lot of our time is going. We're also working on updating. We'll have some other surprise updates. Working on the website. We're working on, if you know, the dispute center. We have to make that sort of V2 compatible. So we'll let you guys know. It should be up by, the plan is to have it up also then, the V2 version, and then we'll actually host a V1 version. So you'll still have access to all of the historical data. So yeah, that is, unless Mike or Brenda or anyone else wants to chime in with updates, I think that's about it. And now we're going to talk about, so the big thing is we're going to talk about just Tellor v2.5 and what kind of the immediate needs are. And this actually goes right into, so somebody just asked a question on the Zoom. Is Tellor a feasible solution in a world with high Ethereum gas fees? And yes, Tellor is feasible. We're actually one of the few feasible oracles with high Ethereum gas fees. And that's kind of what we want to talk about. So, we actually finished the overall design minus some minor tweaks for V2 in May. Well, Ethereum gas prices have skyrocketed since May, and now we're in the world where, basically 100 is the new normal, and sometimes 400, 500 is the new high. And it's a completely different world because, actually whenever we were building the original mining implementation, we pull in the gas price from various sources on what to submit with. And we actually had hard-coded into the miner that if you pull a gas price that was over 100 GWay, something actually broke. It was just an assumption we coded in because it really would never get that high, or you would be crazy if you wanted to submit in that time. But now it's sort of the new normal, and that's what we're living with. But you actually run into a really interesting situation where the reward in Tellor tokens is actually less than the gas to submit. So right now, each miner gets a little over 2 TRB for submitting a mining solution. And at normal gas costs, so what happens is maybe some of the miners can chime in as far as what they've been paying, but so what are we at, $35 price today? So you're getting about $70, and that's a whole lot of money. But at the same point, sometimes the gas fees can be over $70 to submit the mining solution. And so if it's over $70 to submit the mining solution, you actually get into a situation where the whole network freezes up. So we've been at this point before where the Tellor network, nobody's going to mine, because if you submit that mining solution, you're paying more in gas than you're getting back. And this is a big problem for Tellor. So kind of what we figured, we really need to address that situation as far as how can we make sure that the network sort of stays live. And we did do that a little bit with V2. So the one thing that we did is that anytime if a user really wants that piece of data, they can tip it. So you can submit higher tips to say, hey, it's going to cost $100 to submit. And you only get $70 of TRB rewards. I'll pay you, $40 worth of TRB. So now it's worth it for you to submit. And that's actually a different model than, because ultimately, you want to get into a situation where the users have to be the one paying for it. If it costs $100 to submit a price on chain, and a user isn't willing to pay $100 to get that price on chain, like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. Like, there's obviously not the demand for it, and you're sort of just wasting money putting it on chain. And this isn't a situation that only Tellor faces, so other oracles face this problem as well. So if you saw, Chainlink has had these issues. So basically, the way Chainlink works, they have a set of whitelisted nodes, and they all have to push all these prices on chain. And whenever gas price goes up, it gets really expensive for these nodes. And sometimes, like whenever there's a spike in gas fees, their nodes take a long time to submit, and they basically have to just eat the gas costs. So Chainlink, the team kind of has to do it. There's not really a way for the contractor or user of them to directly pay the node, and that's one of the issues. Same, you saw kind of an issue with Maker. The users of the Oracle for Maker has kind of a dual problem where if the gas price goes way high and they want to push an Oracle update, the people who are allowed to push an Oracle update, how are they directly incentivized to pay a higher gas price? And the answer, it's not like in Tellor we have a race, so you just want to be first so you get the reward. There is no reward. You don't get rewarded if you're the one pushing it. So why would you do it? Why are you going to be paying high gas fees? And what you saw a few times is they weren't paying high enough gas fees, and you had this delay. So you want to sort of build in there the assumption that gas fees are going to be a thing, and that's what we've done. But it's still something that's hard to get around. Anyway, but what we're going to talk about is some other issues, especially related to mining. So when it comes to the mining network, we want to do two things. So we want to increase, this is just kind of overarching. So you want to increase decentralization, and you want to increase security. How can you do that? By decentralization, there's two features. So we want more miners. It's just, like it feels better for the network. Obviously, Tellor still works if there's one miner. It's still almost sufficiently decentralized in a way, because even if there is one miner, the disputers still sort of hold the ultimate security piece. But it just, if that one miner sort of retaliates, it causes just the network can freeze up. So, we had the problem with where a large miner came off the network. Was it May? I don't even remember the date. But they came off the network, and the difficulty was so high that it took like 3 hours to mine the next block. We don't like that thing happening. We don't want one miner to sort of be the only one pushing prices. We want it to be decentralized. We want it to have a lot of people kind of submitting it. And even if that one miner who owns the network can't necessarily lie about the prices, because he'll get disputed, he can sort of grief the network a whole lot easier if he's willing to lose money. So we want more miners, and then we also want more security. So, and these two are kind of at odds with one another. That this probably won't come as a surprise to many of you who know, like the basic scalability trilemma. So you have decentralization, you have security, and then you have speed. And then, and basically it's like pick two. Obviously Tellor, we're a lot slower because we want to be over there on the secure and decentralized. But, obviously with security, the problem is the big piece here is if you have a really high stake amount, it makes it more secure. But then at the same point, a really high stake amount reduces decentralization because not as many people can afford it. So this is where we're going to talk about what we're going to do. So the current proposed section in v2.5 of Tellor will be reducing the stake amount. So right now, you have to lock up 1,000 tokens in Tellor. This was sort of a hard-coded number. Originally when we launched Tellor, we had like a base price of around $3 was our assumption. We're obviously much, much higher than $3, which is awesome. But it leads to now, instead of costing $3,000 to start a node on Tellor, it costs $35,000. So some of the pool operators, who had been here for a while were like, this was just a small amount of money, but now I can go pay off my house. And, it leads to different issues with regard to having that much money locked up and being at risk. So we want to reduce the stake amount for these guys, because obviously we never intended it to be $35,000. We want it to be sort of accessible. But part of the problem with the stake amount, so if it goes back to the security piece, because if you reduce the stake amount, now it's cheaper to break your network. Because if you look at what's the cost to break the Tellor network, the cost to actually break Tellor's network and get a bad value on chain is the cost to buy up 51% of the voting share. So we're ignoring that piece because that's theoretically way higher than this. But the base cost to break, so like if you look at like a cost to break analysis, it would be, so you have SA, which is the stake amount, and then you times 3, because you need to get a median value. So you need to break 3 of the 5 miners. So it would cost you 3,000 plus the cost of proof of work. So assuming you have a mining farm already, you can just make this 0. And the cost to break is basically the stake amount times the 3 stakes per block. So every 10 minutes. So this was every 1,000. So it was 3,000 every 10 minutes. So it cost you 3,000 tokens every 10 minutes in the old version. And 3,000 every 10 minutes comes out to, now it was like, so if you look at, I don't even know, 30, somebody want to do quick math? What would be the current cost to break for an hour? 3,000 times 6 times $35. It's really, really high. And pull it off. Yeah, prize goes to whoever types in the chat first. All right, 630K by Spuddy. Meaning it's very, very expensive. And the problem with this is that, so you can actually break Ethereum for an hour, meaning you can like censor Ethereum blocks for way cheaper. So if you look at like the cost to do a proof of work or mine every Ethereum block for the next hour, it's going to be somewhere around like 200K. So if the easier way to just break Tellor would be just mine every Ethereum block for an hour and prevent contract calls to Tellor. That would be a much lower threshold for breaking it. So we don't necessarily need to be at 630K. We could lower it to 200K or somewhere around the cost to break Ethereum. Obviously, it changes with proof of stake and things like that. So the current plan would be, we also, instead of for V2, we go down to 5 minutes. So this actually, in a way, increases our security. Because now if you want to censor Tellor for an hour, you're going to double that. So if you double that amount, you're really, really high. So we can reduce the staking amount significantly. And that's what we're going to do. I think with the current proposal, what we're looking at is probably a 2/3 reduction in the stake amount. So we'll go down to say, 330 or some more even number to be kosher. And it'll be much cheaper for people to become miners, and it'll also be more secure. Obviously, we don't want to go down too much. So this is where we're going to balance things. We'd rather have more governance decisions, say in 6 months, if we have a big price move or something like that, than to lower it too much. Because the fear always is like, now it costs this much because we have a $35 token price. But if we go back down to $6 tomorrow because the SEC decides to crack down on crypto, we don't want to have to jump in and all of a sudden try and raise the rates, to raise the stake amount, because raising the stake amount would probably be a much bigger deal. Just because, now it's sort of uncontroversial because all the miners would be like, hell yeah, unlock my tokens. But, if you had to get a vote through or have the community vote on whether or not to raise it, now none of the miners are ever going to vote for that. So you're going to have an issue. It's one of those things that's going to be really easy to vote in, kind of pushing the prices down. So that's one. Also with v2.5, by the way, we've been pretty open about the fact that we do have an admin key that allows us to upgrade the contracts. We've only used it for transparent upgrades, but we want to throw it away after v2. So that's the plan. We're gonna throw away the admin key, probably a few weeks after we launch V2. And then everything goes to a vote. So you need at least 10% of the token holders to vote. And if a majority support the upgrade, v2.5 is going to be the upgrade, it'll go through. And so the Tellor team holds like 7% or something of all the tokens. So we need like 3% of the tokens to vote. And I think honestly, all the miners themselves hold 3%. So they'll probably want to vote this one through just to unlock it. So it should be like a nice welcome to being a DAO vote, which will be awesome. So be prepared for that. We'll be pushing that one through. Okay, so that's the first thing. So we're going to reduce the staking amount. Other things we can do to kind of help miners. This goes into the gas fee one. So we're already doing some kind of gas. We told you we were reducing a lot of gas fees. Obviously, if you're good at that kind of thing, reducing gas costs, take a look at our contracts. You know, we'd be happy to kind of have bounties. We already have bounties up for reducing that if you're interested. It'll be some fun Solidity practice for you. But what we want to do is we're going to have a variable payout. So this is another big one. You guys still see that? Yeah, variable payout. This is really the other feature, the big one that we're doing. The variable payout. So right now, one of the issues, as we had sort of talked about before, was that whenever the gas costs become higher than the reward, nobody wants to submit. And that's an issue. But it actually messes with a whole lot of things. So it messes with the inflation rate. It messes with the token issuance rate. So you guys might, token holders might like that just because, now less tokens are being emitted. But, we want, part of what we were thinking about doing was actually making the payout actually based upon how long it's been since the last block. So now what we're gonna change to is we actually have a fixed amount of payout per every hour or per time period. And then, so let's say now it's 10 minutes and we pay out 2 tokens to each miner every 10 minutes. If the gas costs are really high, nobody wants to submit because it's going to cost you $200 to submit it. The variable payout is going to work that if you just wait for, instead of say the 10-minute, if you wait to submit the final mining solution until 30 minutes, now you're going to get paid out 3 times as much. So now you're going to get paid out 6 tokens per miner. And what this will do is, as time goes on, the payout increases. Obviously, if you have the solution, you either want to submit it right away, or else somebody else is going to. So you want to do it if it makes sense. But at the same point, we're not like, you won't just sit there perpetually or have to wait for somebody to tip. You can sort of have the system keep going and pay out the same rate. So that's something that we're going to work on doing, as well as the variable payout. This will also make monetary policy a whole lot easier, so we can fix the inflation rate. Because right now we're actually going way under our inflation rate because we have some periods where people aren't mining. And there's a problem. And then you also have issues, like we had issues earlier in the system whenever we got a whole lot of adoption or a new mining system came out, whereas the difficulty is increasing so much, the blocks were much shorter than 10 minutes. And now inflation was actually a lot higher than what we had wanted it to be. So it was a mixed bag, but now sort of the difficulty will still adjust because we still want to have the difficulty and the time targets. But the inflation rate is going to be much more fixed. So yeah, that's going to be something that we're going to be working on. The other things that we can do that we have not yet decided, we'd love kind of the community's feedback on. So the inflation adjustment piece. So right now, for those who have followed for a long time, Tellor originally, when we launched last August, it was 5 TRB tokens to each miner every 10 minutes. In February, maybe March, we did a inflation upgrade. So inflation is really, really high at the beginning of these systems, and we wanted to lower it because it was sort of hard to calculate things. So we decided we were going to go from paying 5 TRB per block down to 1 TRB per miner per block. And it would take place over a year. So from February last year to February this year, it would slowly be reducing. Right now, we're a little over 2 TRB per block, and it's continuing to go down. We could pause that. So we could keep inflation higher if we're not rewarding miners enough. That's something that we're thinking about doing, because if the price is, obviously the reason that you don't want to inflate too much is because the price is sort of, you would sort of flood the market with extra supply and push down the price, and you don't want to do that. But if you have a system where it becomes unusable because nobody is getting enough rewards to actually pay for the mining practice or pay gas emissions, the price is going up, but it's hard for miners to submit. That actually calls for more inflation to pay for that. If the current chokehold is costs on the miners and costs on the users, and we have sort of speculators pouring in, you want to tax the speculative asset of part of it and give it over to some of the actual usage. So that's definitely something that we're going to be looking into and kind of mocking out more, but would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Other ideas that have come up that I can definitely address here. So one of the big issues with miners is that they think that the stakes or the slashing is very harsh. So they would love, it's obviously like you get a payout. So like you have to stake all these tokens and then you get a payment, and you have to calculate your payments based upon cost and also risk. So like if there's a chance you might get slashed, you may not want to sort of mine on Tellor. So one way to encourage more mining is you could reduce the slash amount. So say, say a 2-strike penalty or a 3-strike penalty, to say, we're actually only going to slash you a third, and then you only lose that. Part of the issue with this is that it goes into the cost to break analysis, where it's 3,000 tokens now every 5 minutes. If you lower the amount that you're slashing people, this is the number you're directly lowering. So every time you lower, like I'd rather lower the stake amount in general than lower the percent of the stake amount that we slash, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's something that we have thought about, but it's tough. And then same with people have thought like, well, you could encourage more disputes. Right now, it's really expensive to dispute, and as you actually have to look at how the dispute fee is structured. So it is really expensive to dispute, but that will go down. So if we add more miners, if we increase decentralization, the dispute fee automatically comes down. We actually have it targeted at 200 miners. So once we hit 200 miners, the cost to dispute someone is 15 TRB. Before that, it increases all the way up to the stake amount. And the reason is that you want people to lose money if they're disputing good values. If you could theoretically just censor the system by just disputing every block. So you have to make it really high if you're just disputing every block. And that's why it's actually more expensive to dispute the median value in V2. So it actually costs a lot more to dispute the median value than the subsequent values. The other thing you also don't want them sort of censoring all of your miners. That's why it's based upon the number of miners in the system. Because let's say you only have 10 miners in your system. Now it would basically cost the stake amount times those 10 miners to shut off all of mining in Tellor. And that's a problem. Obviously, it's open to everyone. Somebody can restake and keep the system mining, but we want to sort of make it as hard and as expensive to break as possible. Okay, so that's kind of the Tellor v2.5. So there's not a whole lot going on there. So I can add in here inflation changes, question mark. So it's just like these two things. It should be really, I can't spell changes. Should be really simple. And I think everyone's going to kind of be for it since, you know, we sort of know why. But the whole thing is we want to increase the decentralization of the miners. We want to reduce their stake. And yeah, that's what we're working on. Other pieces, oh, I forgot to mention the one thing. Can I edit down here? Can you guys see? So fifth slot rewards. So for those that don't know, if you submit the fifth miner, the last guy, he's the one that has to like store everything to chain. It's much more expensive gas wise. So the other guys are going to be like 300,000 gas, and he's going to be about 3 times that amount. So people have thought like, well, maybe you would want to give him more TRB. So, and I think we'd be open. We're going to be probably doing that. So throwing him like an extra, you know, 0.1 TRB or something like that, just to sort of increase it. Obviously you can't, it's really hard to say what the exact amount is, because gas prices are variable, very variable. The teller price is also very variable. So how much do you want to increase it by? You don't know, because the scenario you don't want is a situation. So back whenever we were researching whether or not we wanted to pay out the median value more, the problem with paying the median guy more is that if you pay him too much more, then everyone just waits. So they're going to sit on their solution until the other 4 guys submit, and then they look at their values in the mempool or wherever, and then they submit the 5th solution to get the highest reward. And that's exactly what you don't want. You want them submitting values that are independent of the other people's values. You want them trying to submit an honest value. You didn't want that, and you also didn't want to have that situation where people were waiting to submit the 5th slot. You want people to put them up on chain as fast as possible. So if we were paying the 5th guy too much, then he can, you know, people might be waiting, but we might be able to pay him a little bit just to sort of offset some of those costs. You still want it to the point where you want people to try and go faster, so that it might even be good that you're penalizing the 5th slot. But anyway, that's something else that we'll be looking at. As far as timelines on all of these, I would say that we'll be throwing away the admin key 2 weeks after V2 launches. And then my goal would be 2 weeks after that, we submit a proposal for v2.5. 2 weeks to a month after that, we submit a proposal for v2.5, and then it'll be a week-long vote with everyone in there, and you guys can decide whether or not you want to push this one through. Should be pretty simple though. Okay, so that's about it for the tech call. So we have a few questions I can answer quick. Somebody asked, could Tellor work in conjunction with a layer 2 scaling solution to drastically reduce fees and an amount of values submitted on chain? You could. You know, it's really, we would want to find kind of a trustless layer 2 solution. You know, ultimately though, if you want to read a value from, you need to put it on chain. So like there is some ways to reduce gas costs, but yeah, you would definitely just, you want things sort of secured on chain, and you don't want a whole lot of assumptions as far as the layer 2 security goes, because if you have to make assumptions that, you know, you like this layer 2, if all your users also don't like that layer 2, it's going to be a non-starter. So I know with like ZK rollups and things like that, there's a lot of promise, but it's still kind of early. So yes, in the long run, oracles will be really fast and really secure, but we're working on solving the scalability trilemma just like everyone else. And then Lali asks, do you have a plan to use Binance Smart Chain? Not really. I can just be honest. Hopefully in the future. I mean, my big problem with Binance Smart Chain is it's completely centralized. It's not really any way to get around it, that they run all their nodes and they admit to running all their nodes. And maybe once they don't, we can. But yeah, that's about it. So thanks everyone for joining. If you guys have any questions, you guys can hit me up on Telegram or Discord. Anyway, I will talk to you guys all next week. See you.